Hey y'all, welcome to On Their Birthday, or welcome back if you were here for our first episode on Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll. If you haven't listened to that, I definitely suggest going over and listening to that after you get done with this episode because you're already here. Just stay a little bit. So today we're going to be talking about Dolly Parton. Of course, I am someone who loves Dolly along with many, many other people. So while Dolly is still alive and well, I thought to myself, well, what would Dolly do? Dolly was like, well, I'd make a podcast on me, of course. And then I said, well, what would you do if, you're still alive and your career is still going, as it is. And she spoke to me as Dolly does. And she said, well, I think you should just do the first half of my life. And I said, wow, Dolly, what a great idea. I'm so glad you suggested it. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. Of course, I'm not going to go against Dolly herself. And I'm just going to go ahead and do the first about half of her life up until she's about 40, a little older, maybe a little younger. I'm not very good at math, but I'm just going to do the first foundational to her career and when she started really kicking off into what she is known for today. So I'm really excited for this, and I am super excited to do another part on Dolly when it's time and do a part 2 or part 3, part 4. I'm totally into that. I'm not going to complain over Dolly, I promise y'all. With that being said, this is Dolly part 1. Get it? Dolly Parton, Dolly part 1. Anyways, so we're just going to hop right into the first part of Dolly's life, and I hope y'all enjoy. Welcome to On Their Birthday. Dolly Rebecca Parton was born on January 19th, 1946 to parents A.V. Lee Caroline and Robert Lee Parton Sr. Now, she was the fourth of 12 children born in a one-room cabin in Tennessee. Her father was known as Lee, and he worked as a sharecropper, and then later tended to his own tobacco farm. Now, he also worked construction jobs because he had to help support his large family. Like I said earlier, he had 12 kids. That's a lot of kids to support, so he had to work some odd jobs. In 1994, Dolly said that despite her father's illiteracy, that he was one of the smartest people she had ever known. Dolly credits her mother, A.V. Lee, for her musical abilities. Now, she would often fill their home with Smoky Mountain folklore and ancient ballads that originated from the British Isles because her ancestors were Welsh. That was where they were from. Now, in 2002, Dolly described being dirt poor. Her early songs like Coat of Many Colors and In the Good Old Days When Times Were Bad highlighted her family's poverty. Dolly and her family lived in a one-bedroom cabin, as I mentioned earlier, in a predominantly Pentecostal area. This is where she attended the Church of God that her grandfather, Jake Owens, was the pastor of. Dolly's earliest performances were in this church, and they started as early as 6 years old. And when she was just 7 years old, she began to play a homemade guitar, and then by 8, her uncle gave in and gave her her first real guitar. When Dolly was 10, she appeared on the Cass Walker Show, and at 13, she was recording on a small Louisiana label. She even appeared at the Grand Ole Opry for the first time. Dolly graduated from high school in 1964, and the next day she just up and moved to Nashville. She gained success first as a songwriter and signed with Combined Publishing with her songwriting partner, which so happened to be her uncle Bill Owens. She wrote many charting singles in this time, some being Put It All Off Till Tomorrow, sung by Bill Phillips, and Skeeter Davis's Fuel to the Flame. At 19, she signed with Monument Records and was originally signed to be the label's bubblegum pop singer, which, if you know Dolly, probably wouldn't fly with her. And it didn't. Monument resisted Dolly's pleas to record country material because her soprano voice just didn't suit the genre to their liking. However, not long after her song that was sang by Bill Phillips went to number 6 on the charts, Monument allowed her to record and release her first country record, Dumb Blonde. Dumb Blonde was composed by Curly Putnam and reached number 24 on the country charts in 1967. In 1967, Porter Wagoner invited Dolly to join him in a regular spot on his weekly program, The Porter Wagoner Show. Now, Wagoner was a musician and a country music entertainer and had asked his record label, RCA Victor, to sign her. RCA agreed and in late 1967 decided to make her first single with them to be a duet with Wagoner, setting them off on a 6-year streak of top 10 singles for Dolly and Wagoner. Dolly's first solo single, Just Because I'm a Woman, was released in the summer of 1968 and reached all the way to number 17. This first solo single set the tone for the next 2 years of solo efforts, as nothing was as successful as her duets with Wagoner. In the same year, the duo was named Vocal Group of the Year by the Country Music Association. In 1970, Wagoner persuaded Dolly to record Mule Skinner Blues by Jimmie Rodgers, and the record shot to number 3. Shortly after, in February 1971, Dolly had her first number 1 solo single, Joshua. The next 2 years were a completely different tune than the 2 that preceded. Included hits were Coat of Many Colors, Burning the Midnight Oil, Touch Your Woman, and My Tennessee Mountain Home. In late 1973, Dolly released her biggest hit yet, Jolene. This single topped the country chart and had even reached number 7 in the UK in 1976. This propelled her to take the leap that she had been patiently waiting for, a solo career. She performed her last duet concert with Wagoner in April of 1974, and her last appearance on his show followed shortly after. They released their final duet album, Say Forever You'll Be Mine, in 1975. Now, in 1974, we're going to hop back a little bit. I know we just talked about 1975. But she wrote and released her song, I Will Always Love You. She had written it because of her professional break from Wagoner. Now, the single went to number 1 on the country chart. Elvis Presley, yes, the one we talked about last time on their birthday. So go back and listen to that if you haven't yet. Elvis Presley had mentioned that he wanted to record the song. Dolly said in 2006 that what swayed her from taking that deal with Elvis was his manager, Colonel Tom Parker. He told her that it was normal practice for the songwriter to sign over half of the publishing rights to any songs that were recorded by Elvis. Dolly knew better and refused the offer, which later resulted in millions of dollars in royalties over the years because of Whitney Houston's version of I Will Always Love You. Have like a Dolly Parton trivia night. So Dolly records all her things on cassette tapes. It's pretty common knowledge if you are a big fan of Dolly, but she had found old cassette tapes that she recorded on and realized that she had composed Jolene and I Will Always Love You in the same session, the same day. Between the years of 1974 and 1980, Dolly had many country hits, with 8 singles reaching number 1. She began attempting to aim her music in a more mainstream direction to expand past country music. In 1976, she found her manager of 25 years, Sandy Gallon. That same year, her album, All I Can Do, made her realize how much of a role she wanted to play in production, because she co-produced it with her longtime musical partner, Porter Wagoner. The following year, in 1977, she produced a new album titled New Harvest First Gathering, completely on her own. It highlighted her pop tendencies not just in production, but also in her choice of songs, which included My Girl and Higher and Higher. The album topped the country chart, but it never really made a big impression on the pop chart. Now, that made a disappointed Dolly turn to pop producer Gary Klein for the next album. This resulted in Here You Come Again, which became her first million seller and awarded Dolly a Grammy Award for Best Female Country Vocal Performance in 1978. It not only topped the country chart, but it also reached number 20 on the pop chart. The title track not only topped the country chart, but it also became her first single on the pop chart, reaching number 3. The next single, Two Doors Down, topped the country chart and was in the top 20 on the pop charts. The albums Dolly released during this period were developed specifically for the crossover into pop, and I guess you can say she was successful at doing that. In 1980, Dolly starred in the film 9 to 5 alongside Jane Fonda and Lily Tomlin. She, of course, wrote the theme song that shared the same name as the film. And not only did it reach number 1 on the country chart, but in February 1981, it reached number 1 on the pop chart and the adult contemporary charts, which, if you were keeping up, gave her a triple number 1 hit. It also received a nomination for an Academy Award for Best Original Song, and between the years of 1981 and 1985, she had 12 top 10 hits, at least half of which reached number 1. During this period, she was continuing to make appearances on the pop chart. The film, The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas, premiered in 1982 with a re-recorded version of I Will Always Love You that reached the top 50. Then the song Islands in the Stream, duetted with Kenny Rogers, written by the Bee Gees and produced by Barry Gibb of the Bee Gees, spent 2 weeks at number 1 in 1983. Throughout the mid-1980s, she was continuously selling records, which included songs like Save the Last Dance for Me, Downtown, Tennessee Homesick Blues, Real Love, Don't Call It Love, and Think About Love. All of these songs reached the country top 10, with Real Love and Think About Love reaching number 1 on the country chart. Despite all of this, RCA Records didn't renew her contract when it expired in 1986. So in 1987, she began her new journey and signed with Columbia Records. Now, I know that wasn't a super long episode, but I want to keep it short and sweet since Elvis was super long. Maybe on Dolly's next birthday, I'll continue on from her joining Columbia Records, because there is still so much to get to know about her and from her. She is a true one-of-a-kind artist who knew what she wanted and went after it. I mean, she went to Nashville as soon as she graduated high school. Her drive and her want to do what she's meant to be doing is inspiring, and so much so that I am continuously asking myself, as I've said earlier, what would Dolly do? Well, now I would believe she would say, thanks for joining us here today. I hope you have a holly Dolly birthday. Please share with everyone you care about. Feel free to send in your favorite person, and I'll see you on their birthday. Bye.